Today's project, we are going to make this superbly adorable felt reindeer ornament. Has a little scarf, a little red nose, or you can do brown on both sides. It's very cute and it's not very difficult. Supplies wise, you can use your sewing machine for almost the whole thing. There is a little bit of hand sewing, and you'll need the pattern as well as felt. You'll want a couple of different brown felts, maybe a color felt for the actual scarf, a little bit of red, just kind of depends on your style and what you want. You'll also need some eyes, and these are just animal eyes or stuffed animal eyes. You can buy them like on Amazon. You should be able to get them like at your local quilt shop or whatever. But yeah, like I said, you can buy them on Amazon, excuse me. Or if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to use these, you can also just sew, like tack on an eye with a stitch or a piece of felt. It's totally up to you, but I just really like these. I think they add a little bit something different. The pattern is free. You can get it in the description. But you'll need to cut out all of the pieces, and it tells you specifically what you need to cut out for each piece. Again, it's your discretion on color wise. If you want, you know, a blue reindeer, that's fine, but make sure you get that. Now, to save on time, I've actually already cut the majority of my pattern pieces. So I have my ears, my face, the body. I'm doing a brown nose instead of a red nose on this one, my little red scarf, and then I have a piece here to do my antlers, and I'm going to kind of show you how I do the antlers a little bit differently. Okay, so we're going to start off with attaching some of our pieces. So I have found through the years when I'm doing my felt ornaments, I've done all sorts of different types of felt ornaments, but they're so small, and sometimes stitching those small pieces together can be a nightmare, and they move, and then it's frustrating. So I have found that using some type of basting spray, basting adhesive, works wonders. This is spray and bond. You can even do like a craft bond, like Elmer's craft glue, because it's felt project, totally works. Sulky has one. There's lots of them. Does a brand really matter? Not necessarily, but you will learn to love this when you're doing these projects. So I found that when you're spraying, you want to spray the piece that you're attaching, not the piece, the big piece. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, but it will. So first thing that I do is I have like a piece of paper. This is just a scratch piece of paper that was in my trash can. That's all you need. Make sure that if they're mirror images, they are the opposite of each other. And then you're just going to spray just a little bit of basting spray onto your felt piece. Now, make sure you have something underneath, or else whatever surface you're on is going to get really tacky and sticky, and it's not fun. So, important tip. Then you're going to take your reindeer in this instance, and we're just going to literally attach our piece that's supposed to be glued on. And he should be slightly lower. So on this one you can kind of see there's a little piece at the top, slightly lower than matching at the top. Okay, and now those pieces are going to stay in place. They're not going to move. Huge help, right? They don't move. Okay, so we're going to sew those here in a second, but we're going to do our ears next. So this is the back of our ears, and these are the inside of our ears. So again, just a little bit. You don't need a lot. You can also use like a pencil, or in this instance, I've got this little poker. I don't know, that's not a great like term, but here we go. So there's my two little ears stuck together. Just makes it so much easier to sew, I promise. It's going to make a big difference in making sure those pieces don't go anywhere. All right, next we are going to stitch them. So I'm just using a regular brown thread to stitch them on. I'm just going to use a straight stitch, and I'm just going to stitch around my pieces. Okay, nothing amazing, just so that they'll stay in place. So you can kind of see here, I'll pull this guy off. It's just to ensure that my ear pieces stay together. That's all this is about. They don't fall off when I put them on the Christmas tree or after they've been in the garage for the season or the summer and I pull them out. They didn't fall apart. That's all it is. Okay. Can you hand stitch it? For sure. But sometimes when it comes to felt ornaments, I like to be lazy. All right, we're gonna just stitch along the inside of the face, not this portion, because we're gonna hand stitch this part here in a little bit. So we're just gonna stitch along here, go around our curve a little bit. Now I'm gonna put this guy in. Stitch around that. And you're just kind of stitching along the edge. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to get that piece to stay on, right? That's the idea. All right, there's my two pieces. It kind of looks like a puppy right now, but it's not gonna be a puppy. All right, next we are going to sew our antler. Now the antler is kind of tricky to cut out, and so I actually found that the fastest way to do this is to have my two layers together and actually either trace my antler onto my material or pin this guy in place and just stitch around it and stitch those two layers together. Does that make sense? Every time I tried doing it a different way, my antlers came out looking like bananas, and this is actually a lot faster and it looks a lot better. So I'm just gonna literally just put it right in my machine with the paper already cut out, and I'm just gonna follow along the outline of my paper so that my antler is the correct shape. And then if I do sew on any of that paper, I can actually just pull it up and get rid of it without too many consequences, which I like. And you have to go slow, obviously, because this is a tiny little thing, but in the end, it just was so much easier and it looked a lot better. All right, we're almost there. Let's go down to the bottom. All right, so you can kind of see here, my antler is sewn on, okay? And I'm just gonna cut it out. And I'm just gonna trim around my antler. Just trimming around all those stitches. So it's already cut, or it's already stitched, I'm just cutting. And I guess you could do a similar thing for the ears if you wanted to, but the ears are not nearly as challenging as all of the edges of this antler was. Okay, and now I'm just gonna make sure I pull off any paper that's left over. And there's my antler. See, much easier. So much easier, promise. All right, so I've got my antler, I've got my two reindeer, and I've got my ears. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to attach the ears to the back of the reindeer. So the ears go in the back, and then the antler will go here. Okay, so I'm just going to put my sewing machine on a zigzag stitch, and I'm just going to zigzag the end of my ear to my reindeer's head. Just put it right in, zigzag across and back. Simple as that. Okay, now to get it to match on the opposite side, I just lay them together like this and then put my ear in here so that they are matching. You see, it's kind of like cheating. And now it's in the right spot so that I can put it in my machine and stitch it in place. All right, so now I've got both sides done here. Just need to clip all my threads. It's starting to look like a reindeer now, isn't it? Slowly but surely. Once you get that eye on there, it makes a difference. All right, so now I'm going to put my layers together. Now this is the part where we're actually going to use our sewing needle and do some hand stitching. If you don't hand stitch, if you prefer not to, if you can't, you can put these layers together on your sewing machine and just stitch them together. That does work. You could do like a zigzag all the way around. I just really like the look of the hand stitch on the outside of my felt ornaments, and that's just a personal preference for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the pieces together with wrong sides together or insides together, and we're going to stick our antler in here at the top. Okay, and I'm going to pin my antler in place. That's just going to make sure it doesn't move. Now for my reindeer, I'm going to leave the front open partially, and that's how I'm going to get my stuffing in. So I'm going to start here and stitch around and leave this opening. If you want, you could do like the back side as well. I just find that this is a little bit easier because you can get to the head and the legs just a little bit faster or easier. I'm also going to trim just a little bit off the front, just so I just trimmed so that these matched up perfectly. And maybe trim even here just a little bit. Because sometimes once you get it sewn on, things kind of move a little bit on you. All right, so for this, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. And hopefully you can see. We are going to do what we call a blanket stitch. And that's a nice decorative stitch. So you can see on here, you can see the stitch, and it actually comes along the edge of the reindeer. You'll be able to see that a little bit better here in just a second, but I'm just going to tie the end of my embroidery floss. So I'm using the Silky 12 weight cotton embroidery floss. You can use whatever you want. I prefer embroidery floss to regular sewing all-purpose thread because it's thicker, it looks better, it doesn't tangle as much as your hand sewing. Makes a big difference, especially when you have to do the hand sewing all the way around and it just keeps knotting and frustrating. So I prefer using embroidery floss, but you can use whatever you want. Our two layers are together here. I'm going to lift one of my layers and put my needle through that single layer so that my knot is on the inside of my ornament here. And then I'm just going to go do a whip stitch around just to kind of start my ornament. Now this will be a little bit harder to see because I'm starting in the dark, but you can do it here. So to do a blanket stitch, it's very simple. You're going to go through both of your layers and you have this loop left over. So your needle goes through that loop. So you can see right here, here's my loop right here that I made, and my thread went through that loop, and I pull. And what that's going to do is it's going to leave a line of embroidery floss along the edge of your entire project, and it just gives it a nice finished look. It makes it look home sewn in a good way. I know sometimes people are like, oh, it's home sewn, and it's kind of a negative connotation, but it just, I don't know. I really like felt ornaments that have the blanket stitch around the outside. I just think it's a very traditional look and very cute. Again, like I said, you can put it on your sewing machine. You could do a decorative stitch all the way around. You could do a zigzag all the way around. You could just do a straight stitch all the way around. Any of those would work. You definitely can make that choice for yourself, what works for you. But I just really love the look of the blanket stitch. And you'll be able to start seeing it here a little bit better as we're getting into the lighter section of our reindeer. I can remember to put my loop in there. So I'm going down, loop around my needle, and pull. Now when it comes to hand sewing, I do not like to have a really long tail of thread. That to me just is very distracting. It makes it harder. I get a lot more knots. So for this project, I will end up having to probably finish this line of thread and then come through with a second one, but that's okay. Now you can kind of see I'm doing a little bit different here when I got to the antler, because the antler's on the inside. So I'm just doing like a little plain stitch across the antler here. I've come full circle, I guess, full reindeer. This is our opening here, and this is our additional thread at the end. So now we're going to stuff it, and you actually don't need a whole lot of polyfiber fill to stuff your reindeer. And if you don't have polyfiber fill, you can use, excuse me, you could use fabric scraps or, you know, whatever you have around. I'm just going to put a little piece in, and I use the eraser on a pencil. I found that's actually one of the best ways to kind of get your batting or your fiber fill in there. And you just put a little bit in at a time and push it where you want it to go. This one's going to go up and be part of the face. And again, this is not a stuffed animal, this is an ornament, so you don't need like a ton of this fiber fill. You're just wanting it to have that 3D look for a felt ornament. Grab just a little bit more for the leg here and the body. All right, so my reindeer's filled up with poly fiber fill. I'm just gonna push as much of it into the inside as I can, and then I'm just gonna continue with my blanket stitch where I left off to finish off my reindeer and close up that opening that we have. Shouldn't take more than a couple of stitches to do that. Now sometimes if I have a real intricate ornament that has like lots of pieces, like I really want to get it inside the ear or to the leg and it's a little bit harder, I might stitch to the ear and then fill it with polyfiber fill and then continue around. And sometimes that's a little bit easier to do than trying to get it in the right place while I'm you know, when at the end. All right, I'm back to the beginning, so now I'm just going to tie it off with a knot and use my scissors, cut it there. All right, here's my cute little reindeer. Okay, the next thing we're gonna wanna do is add our eyeballs. And our eyeballs are important. Again, we're gonna use our basting adhesive to keep our eyeballs in place, which seems a little silly, but there's not really another way to keep them in place unless you somehow attach them before, and that's kind of a nightmare. So you're gonna need something that has a sharp end, and I'm actually going to pierce through both sides of my reindeer before I put my eyeballs on. And then I'm going to use my basting spray and spray my eyes. And I'm going to place my eye inside. And I kind of put it at a little bit of an angle. And that helps, or at least in my opinion, that helps it stay in place a little bit better. Now, I'm gonna fix my hole here. Not quite dug in enough. Here we go. Okay, there's my eye. See, isn't that looking cute? All right, now we're gonna do the nose. The nose is gonna be the same. We're gonna spray it. And we're gonna tack this side of the nose on. And then we're gonna tack this side of the nose on. Oops. So both sides of the nose are on there. And then I'm just going to put it in my sewing machine, and I'm just gonna tack it in the middle. So I'm gonna put my sewing machine on a zigzag and then just put a little tack on it. So I'll show you here. Put my scissors here. So I just tacked those two layers together through the reindeer's face. Okay, and it just kind of adds a little, kind of like a bubble look. All right, next, my scarf. And you can do your scarf any color you want. But this one, we're just gonna use a little bit of basting spray. And I like to put it kind of at an angle, and then bring it down this way, and bring it down this way. I think we need to move it down just a little bit. And the basting spray, you can see, it doesn't stick forever. You can move stuff around, but it does keep things in place where you want them. And then we can just take our needle and thread, and we can just tack our cute little scarf in place. And go through all the way. So we'll make sure, there we go. Oops. Okay. And then I will just tie it off kind of on the back side here so we don't see it. Okay. How cute is he? Just the cutest little thing. Now we're going to take just a little bit more of our embroidery floss and we'll make our loop so that we can actually hang our ornament up. I've lost my needle. There it is. All right, the last step is we're going to take just a little bit more of our embroidery floss and we're going to make our loop for our ornament to actually hang up. So we just bring it around and then I come up at the top here and tie it. And then usually I will do a couple of double knots at the top just to make sure that it doesn't slide. Not a couple, I will do a double knot at the top maybe. I didn't leave my threads as long this time. You know, sometimes that happens, right? There we go. Okay. Whew. That was trickier than it usually is. All right. So there is our reindeer. How cute is that little reindeer? And here's the reindeer's friend. So our two cute little reindeers all ready to go.